Today we're talking about the episode Metamorphosis, where they're really trying hard to make this a tragic villain. Is it successful? I'll share.
All aboard!
But before we get into all that, I'm going to give you my 90-second rundown, giving you the whole rundown of the episode before the Brainiac bomb goes off. Let's see if I can do it. All right, the opening of this introduces Stagg, who is proposing this big new metamorphosis thing to make soldiers more impervious to all this stuff. The investors turn him down. He goes, oh, I need a human subject. Then we go to this train. We see his assistant transforming this suitcase, and he said, oh, don't leave it out of your sight. But then it goes into storage capacity, and then there's a big explosion, and there's all this stuff and mutagens around there. Batman's investing, and Green Lantern goes to investigate, and then he meets up with his old pal Rex, I think his name was, and he goes, oh, it's good to see you. Oh, now working for Stagg. Well, then Stagg blames him for what happened, and so he fires him, but then he goes, oh, this could be my test subject. So he puts this, the experiment thing blows up and all that, and then he changes his form, and the bullets bounce off him, all that. And then meanwhile, he sees pictures of his girlfriend with his old buddy, the Green Lantern, John, the Green Lantern. And then he goes, oh, he gets jealous, and then they fight, and then we go into part 2, and then he's fighting some more, and then he's kind of good, he's kind of tragic, he's kind of bad, he's all this. And then Stagg, the guy that, was behind all this, turns into this giant monster. They're fighting. He goes, oh, it's the only way to stop us. And so they battle it together, and then they fight it, and he goes, oh, I can't do what you want me to. So he's kind of half and half, and everything ends happy. I did it. A lot of backstory. I skipped over a lot of the story, but you'll have that.
Well, that was pretty darn sloppy.
So I want to start by saying Metamorphosis is actually a really interesting villain. I don't know if you can see it. I have a album up on the wall there with Metamorphosis. It's right there. He's right there. But it has a theme song of Metamorphosis. It's kind of comical. And clearly a theme song, I think it's from the 60s or something. I think that was one of my first introductions to him. And he's kind of cool. I've always been a fan of like the shape-shifting sort of characters, the Clayface, or not exactly like Mr. Fantastic, but that sort of thing. He's a little different because he can change his actual anatomy. And when I sat down to watch this episode, I had forgot about him being a part of this. And then as I was watching it, I couldn't remember exactly where he fit in. Was he a good guy? Was he a bad guy? And then I was like, I think my only experience with the character is from this album. I don't remember seeing him in the comics, but I may have had this memory of the Justice League episode in my brain somewhere that I just needed to unlock. But he's a cool character, and I was excited to see them make him a part of the Justice League. Obviously, I don't remember this appearance, so I don't know if he makes a reappearance.
And then he just turned into smoke and disappeared.
Definitely, this felt like there was a lot of setup, a lot of backstory to create this character, and they were making a lot of attempts to sort of make him a tragic villain, and we're going to talk about that to see if it really succeeds, because that's something that, in Batman the Animated Series, they always did really well. And here we are trying to do that again. So let's see if it works.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
This is one of the longest cold opens that I remember. And it's really a lot of backstory for this character, because we don't see the Justice League until pretty far into it. I didn't see I don't remember what the exact time was. But we wait quite a while, and it's all about him. This almost felt like a spin-off episode, the amount of time that they were devoting to creating this character. And it's not even until much of the way through the first part that we see him become Metamorphosis, which is not dissimilar to the way they did Two-Face, which is, I think, him and Clayface, I think, are one of the ultimate tragic villains, and I feel like that was sort of the formula that they were using with this. And I do like the relationship, the way that they tie him to the Justice League and kind of cross over that, is he good, is he bad, is having that backstory with John Stewart. I think that adds a nice layer, and it's not just some random villain or random bad guy, but he's got that backstory. But I also feel with the amount of the time that they were spending on that character and Stagg and his assistant goon, Java, I think his name's Java.
A toast, Java, to unbridled capitalism.
I don't get it, boss.
They spent a lot of time on the wrong things. some of that I didn't feel like I needed. I needed the backstory of who he was, but there's a lot of stuff with Stagg, and again, I don't know how relevant that is that we knew as much about Stagg. He just could be a billionaire, or not even a billionaire because he's trying to get funding, but this tycoon or inventor person that's trying to get this idea off the ground, and they spend so much time on it, and I feel like we lose what I want to see, which is, who is this character? And also, once he starts to become Metamorpho, they don't really explain his powers really well. And that's when I was starting to realize, oh, I don't think I know as much about him as I thought I did, because all I know is what's in that song.
Strong as iron, holy as sin.
And so I was like, wait, what is his power? He can change his types of matter and stuff like that. It was very confusing to me.
What's happening to me?
And I think because when you're watching stories, what you start with feels like it carries a greater weight. So we spent all this time with Stagg, and it seemed like he was the important thing. And there was a point where I was like, does he become Metamorpho? And he's the bad guy, or does Java? Java already looks like a villain. And that was confusing. It was just, I feel like maybe they could have set up Stagg in another episode, focused this one on Rex. Rex Mason, is that his name?
Rex Mason was his real name.
I think would have been a better balance. And I hate to say this, but it's just true that I was getting very bored with this episode until Batman showed up.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Batman doing some investigation at the crash and, looking through evidence and stuff, and Batman being a detective. Me personally, that's what got me excited. I went, oh, this is interesting. Now, it doesn't lead much from there. They were just sort of giving something to Batman. But again, that is sort of what the track of this show has been, is that they sort of spent a lot of time initially wanting to go, let's not have Batman be a huge part of the show. And I think they were learning, there was people like me, fans of Batman, that were going, I want to see more Batman. So this sort of felt like they were throwing him in there for that purpose, that I actually experienced of going, oh, now I'm interested, Batman's there. And then it just sort of doesn't matter as much.
That depends on your point of view.
So overall, part one felt like a lot of nothing. It's one of those episodes where I know it's a two-parter, so very much there's a balance that you got to go between having that be a continuation and going, okay, we're setting this up and then we're paying it off in the second part. But at the same time, and again, this is what's so bizarre about the time period that this aired, is you could have seen these episodes out of order, depending on whatever local station was playing at the time. It's like, I feel like the episodes really needed to stand on their own much better. Maybe it stands on its own, but it certainly doesn't hold my interest on its own, which is a bit of a problem.
Sorry, boss.
They spent a lot of time setting all this up. It sort of elevated the expectations of the second part to go, okay, we set up a lot of stuff, now is the payoff. Well, then we get to part two.
I can't believe Mason did all this.
There's a big fight between Metamorpho and the Justice League. Kind of cool. Him becoming Kryptonite, that was pretty neat. Again, I was revealing what his powers were. I went, okay, he can do that. Well, that's a formidable threat to the Justice League, that he can become whatever their weakness is. So that was sort of interesting, but it was one big battle. There were some neat dynamics there. But then we have Stagg becoming this giant monster. And that's when it really started to lose me, because then it just sort of deteriorated into this Justice League versus a big monster fight, and them needing to, Metamorpho to help them, which was sort of obvious, or it was sort of, it was expected, right? So it just felt sort of formulaic in that sense. When I saw Stagg become the monster, I was like, oh, okay, I see where we're going. And it was just sort of disappointing. And again, maybe because my expectations were so much higher with the first part, and then it was a bit of a letdown. Now, he is a worthy adversary for Justice League, so I'll give him that. And the battle is good, to the extent that they're like, oh, we need the help from Metamorpho. So that worked out. I feel like they were focusing on the wrong things. I feel like, in one hand, they wanted to make Metamorpho a tragic villain. They were playing up this sort of dynamic between him and Green Lantern, and then the jealousy with his girlfriend, which sort of just felt out of place and like it's just a misunderstanding, So it was just like that felt forced. So it felt like they were going in a lot of different directions. And again, this seems to be a recurring theme. like they committed to making it a two-parter before they needed it to be. And then we're in this position where we're going, well, let's just throw a bunch more stuff in there. I would have rather this just been a one-parter. Is one-parter a real word?
It doesn't work like that.
So now it comes time to rank this episode among my favorite episodes so far, and truly it, for me, missed the boat. I think I had some expectations with it being Metamorpho, and I had some wants and needs of how that would come to fruition, and it sort of fell short. So for me, it falls at the number 9 spot of my favorite episodes so far.
Are you hurt?
Only my pride.
I have it beating out Secret Origins because I sort of just write off Secret Origins just as a establishing the show sort of episode without a lot of substance. But this falls below Injustice, which Injustice wasn't great either, but there was some different elements that, you know, and all the different villains and things like that just made that squeak out above this one. But really, I think they missed the boat. I think that they should have just focused on making him a tragic villain and having him stand on his own. I don't think we needed all this stuff with Stagg and that sort of dynamic.
What do you want me to do with them?
Dump him.
That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you're interested in seeing a really good example of a tragic villain, I want to share with you my review of Clayface, which you can watch here.